What TV show was amazing at first but became unwatchable for you later on? This stuff is really helping me find shows with great 1 to 2 seasons and then know when to stop watching. Sliders after they killed off Professor Arturo. Whispers Sliders. Whispers Sliders, oh, God, I heard it. Scandal. After a few seasons, you'd wish Olivia would kick Fitz to the curb and move on already. My wife loves that show, but what gets me is that stupid camera shutter sound every scene transition. Makes it unwatchable. Once Upon a Time. The last season was awful. I stopped watching it when they brought in characters from Frozen. The constant flip-flopping of Rumpel was the most annoying plot writing I've ever seen. He'd make huge character leaps then revert back because the story said so. Jennifer Morrison, while a great actress on House in the first couple seasons, you could tell started phoning it in the later seasons. Rumpel was what done me in. He was such a great villain, and then his backstory with Balefire was awesome. Learning everything he'd done just to get back to him. How he even lost him in the first place? Great storytelling, totally got me on side. And then he was good, which was fine, whatever, but then he backslid and it felt like such a take back of that awesome character development. But Belle kept trying to drag him back into the light and I just lost track from there. They had a great actor and a compelling character, originally, and it's, as they didn't know what to do with him after those first couple seasons. Like, they wanted to hold on to him no matter what, even though they had nothing for him, lol. I didn't mind Morrison, but I stopped watching sometime around the Pan/King Arthur, so I got out early. All that said, even at his worst, the reason Mr. Gold walked with a cane was because of how many times he had to carry the whole dang show on his back. Rumpel was what done me in. He was such a great villain, and then his backstory with Balefire was awesome. Learning everything he'd done just to get back to him. How he even lost him in the first place? Great storytelling, totally got me on side. This right here. Killing off Balefire when bringing back Rumpel killed the character of Rumpel for good. It was 3 seasons of story with the 2 just pissed away. It wasn't just Rumpel, Regina was dragged around too. Their 2 best actors were both villains, and for some reason they thought the only way to keep them around was to redeem them. And then when that wasn't working well enough, they had to make the heroes bad to even everyone out. With Rumpel, they could have kept him as this chaotic neutral force, who tended to lean, but only lean, towards good out of love/loyalty/possessiveness for Bay and Belle, and Henry, after finding out he's his grandson. He's still very much on his own team, he's not actually good, but he's kind of alright sometimes. If the good guys actually figured out how to deal with a chaotic imp in a way that benefited them, instead of grumble shaming. Like, there have been other characters that tread the line of villain and good, while still maintaining their character. Garrick on DS9 is a good example. Regina too. That was the queen, right? She's evil. No, now she's good. Wait, she's evil again. Nah, I'm good. The constant flip-flopping of Rumpel was the most annoying plot writing I've ever seen. Surely he wouldn't betray us 7 times in a row. I think we should trust him implicitly with this magical megafin that only he could find a sinister use for. I got fed up when the wicked stepmom lost her BF. I felt like she couldn't have one nice thing and it irritated me. The first season was so good though. They brought in characters from Frozen. They didn't just bring in the characters from Frozen. What became a shot-for-shot, line-for-line live-action remake of Frozen. It was beyond stupid. Chocolate. Kill me. I know why this is. Originally, the show was going to be based off a comic called Fables. The general plot is the same, fairy tale mashup and big bad villain for them to unite against. But Fables is a rated R comic with a lot of dark elements. Once Upon a Time is ABC Family. They wanted to tone down the show. The people in charge of Fables didn't want a washed-down shore. Creative differences and disputes led to the Fables show never being made. But since most fairy tales don't have copyright, they made their own version of the show. At first, it was great, but they didn't have a story to follow after losing the story of Fables. From the first season they were pretty much winging it, and it shows. I still wonder what an actual Fables show would look like. The Wolf Among Us, anyone? Fantastic game. I love how a prequel is too. I made myself stop halfway through S2. It was clear that the concept was a one-season idea. Despite S2 having some cool things in it, the cat was out of the bag. From what I've heard, this wasn't a bad decision. I enjoyed watching it because it was as the soap opera passions combined with Disney Smash Brothers, including eventually pulling in characters unrelated to Disney. The show was also pretty self-aware, so it had characters complaining about things like people constantly getting pulled into portals or losing their memory. Heroes. First season was great, and then the writer's strike happened. Not just the strike, but the network originally, there was supposed to be a different cast each season. The show was always supposed to be centered on ordinary people discovering their abilities. Unfortunately, Season 1 and some of its characters were so popular, the network forced to keep everyone around. Look at Season 1. Most of the characters had full arcs. Nathan made his choice to abandon the plan and give his life to get Peter out of the city. Hero learned the power was within him and not the sword. You can go down most of the list of characters and see their full arc, only for them to repeat the arc every season after because they didn't know what to do with them. Peter had to forget he had powers, and then get nerfed. Hero had to continually have an excuse not to use his powers. Sylar had to constantly flip-flop. Parkman had to be a hot mess forever. That's really interesting and explains perfectly what went so horribly wrong with that show. If the network didn't F everything so spectacularly, Heroes could have been an all-time great one. The first season was so captivating. Yeah, it was the best thing when it came out, everyone was talking about it constantly. Season 2 was such a disappointment, and the show really went from hero to zero. I still get chills when I think of Hero saying "save the cheerleader, save the world." From Season 2 onward I can barely remember the plot, let alone any individual scenes. Writer's strike aside, it could have been so much better if they weren't afraid to kill characters. Every major death was reversed. Seemed to go from a well-written, plotted-out series with a lot of cool twists, to a made-it-up-as-they-go-along series where they just killed off random characters for shock value. Then also would bring people back to life randomly. Sometimes just the same actor playing a new character. I remember being so disappointed in the first season finale. They seemed to be building up to all the characters with powers they'd followed meeting up to take on the big bad guy. But then it just sort of fizzled out. Any of the CSIs. Once you get into about 3/4 seasons of them, you start realizing how ridiculous some of these cases are. My issue with most crime shows is they are so formulaic. After a season or two, I can pick out the bad guy as soon as he shows up on screen. It's basically Scooby-Doo. Except Scooby-Doo is actually fun. We were able to enhance the grainy black and white security camera's video quality, and now we have the killer's face reflected off of the victim's cornea. Actually, it was the reflection of the image of the killer's face in the victim's cornea on a bystander's glasses. Not only that, but the reflection can also be seen on the freshly waxed wheels of a car passing by at 100 km/h. How, you ask? Using the revolutionary new techniques of removing blur and clearing and sharpening the image up to 4K quality. As a graphic designer, I hate that show. Not that I can't discern between entertainment and reality. Web link. Haha, yes. One of my best friends does graphic design and he's like, holy F people, I can't do that. Misfits. I eventually came to appreciate Rudy as a character, and I did push through to the end despite it not being good anymore, but once most of the original main cast was gone they just didn't have to plots to keep it going. With the first group, it was a decent enough premise, working class teenagers doing community service who get superpowers related to their character flaws. The self-conscious one hears people's thoughts about her, the shy one becomes invisible, etc., which acted as a mechanism for developing the characters, learn to control the powers, learn to overcome the character flaw. Simple, but effective. By the end, it was just working class teenagers who are sometimes in orange jumpsuits and also superpowers exist. Their characters weren't interesting and their powers weren't thematically meaningful, so it just sort of meandered. For me, the show ended after Simon went back in time. I also warmed up to Rudy, and he really added something to the show, But everything after Simon's arc was mostly filler to me. Also, while I'm actually glad this show got some attention, even if it was in a post like this lol. I really loved the series up to a certain point. They managed to make milk a terrifying superpower, and that was really next level. They get points for lactokinesis. That has got to be the most crap power ever. Lactokinesis guy proceeds to wreck everyone's crap so bad that time travel was the only way to fix it. That effin' milk guy. Same here. I recently rewatched it after remembering one of Nathan's quips, "Save me Barry," and I really can't get past after Simon goes back in time. The show loses the charm it had with the OG cast. I say he's a right Conti and I effin' love ya. On an almost daily basis. Great show until they got new powers. When I rewatch I stop there. I absolutely loved the first season for the reasons you said. Nathan truly made the show amazing. Second season was alright, but then once Nathan left and everyone changed their powers I had to stop watching. You'd F your sister for a slice of cheese. I don't even like cheese. That makes it worse, you sick bastard. Randomizing the powers was shark jumping. Their powers were intricately connected to who they were as people and what actually made them misfits. Changing that up just dropped the entire compelling part of the show. Actually, I liked the hero arc of Simon in Season 3 after the power switch because you find out how badass he is with the time travel / BMX thing. But yeah, after Nathan left and Simon in Season 3 it just sort of dies. Also switching the powers related to the characters felt off too. I agree, I liked the hero arc too, if for no reason then it showed us what a brilliant actor Ewan is. Anyone who saw Misfits knew the man was a talent way before Game of Thrones. Pretty Little Liars. My favorite part about PLL is how Season 3 to halfway through Season 5 took place during the span of less than 2 months in Rosewood time. Multiple people were murdered, regained their vision from being blind, became blind again, became A, stopped being A, were checked into a mental asylum, left said mental asylum, finding out you had a secret child, then finding out it's not actually your child, presumed dead, came back to life, died again, house fires, people disappearing then coming back like nothing ever happened, being run over by a car, breaking up and getting back together, effing a ghost, Allison returning to Rosewood, Arya taking a life then getting over it 2 episodes later, and multiple fake murders. I hate this show, but I love this show. PLL's real value from the beginning was in its concept, but it became very clear by like Season 3 that the writers were just making things up as they go. They were so focused on subverting audiences' expectations that they ruined a perfectly good idea. It was disappointing to watch them destroy such an iconic teen show. I'm really surprised the British people weren't in an uproar at how awful Spencer's twins' accent was. That crap was offensive even to non-British people. It's so bad that I laughed out loud. God, the whole series finale is so unintentionally, tragically hilarious. If they'd at least followed the books, More Than Second it wouldn't have been so disappointing. I hate this idea that reveals can't be anything anyone in the fandom has guessed. The reveal of who A is doesn't need to be wholly unexpected, the twist can be in why they became A or who worked with them to make things possible. Twitter really effed with the writing for that show. Fans would literally harass the writers and actors if there was any sign that their favorite character was evil or going to die. Even the books kind of got a little meh. I read the first 8 and they were really good. The resolution was satisfying and it felt like a good place to end, but then it made money and the author decided to continue. I tried to read the next book and it just didn't feel right. Like another series that made money and dragged on way too long. The first 8. What, how many are there? Sounds like the author did the same thing as the writers of the show, which is prolonging our suffering. Glee. The first season was a hilarious satire of stupid teen dramas. Then it became a stupid teen drama. What the hell are regionals, anyway? They're this close. I thought this was regionals? Don't let my confusion undercut its importance. After regionals, it's straight onto sectionals. And then semis. Then semi-regionals. Then regional semis. Then national lower zone semis. This is who we are now. This is what we do. Oh, Britta is in this. Glee. It's the feeling you get when your brain finally lets your heart get in its pants. Glee. It's like a drug that you use that turns your pain into shoes and your shoes into dance. Good old Ryan Murphy. Known for strong starts and weak finishes. I didn't know he did Glee. I gave up on AHS years ago because of this. The first 4 eps would be good and then it would turn into a meandering mess I didn't give 2 craps about by the end. Every single season without fail. Amazing hook, interesting cast, cool setting, then the show just arbitrarily loses steam and goes nowhere. Even the songs got boring after a while. They started writing the stories around popular music instead of finding songs to fit the plot like in season 1. I swear the songs started being tied to other things outside of the show. Like I would see so-and-so is doing a tour and at basically the same time that same so-and-so songs being featured on Glee. I was done when they introduced a love interest to Rachel, Jessie, to make Finn jealous. I was like, oh my god, they did this whole character and storyline to sing Jessie's girl, didn't they? And then they did in fact sing the song and I quit watching. Kevin McHale said that he gave up on the show when they performed What Does the Fox Say like, Man Oh Man. When Artie wheels himself into the pool when Will propose to Emma, I'd like to think that's really when Kevin McHale gave up. My favorite moment was when they had Jenna Ushkowitz perform Gangnam Style despite her not speaking a lick of Korean, just because she was Asian. She had to memorize the lines phonetically as if it was a fake language and had no idea what she was actually singing. I just saw a clip from an interview with some cast members where they were saying their least favorite songs from the show. Jenna said Gangnam Style. Seriously, I loved and still do love the first season. It was so tongue-in-cheek and genuinely funny. Yes, they were singing the most predictable songs but at least they made sense. Later they had so much more production than a broke high school club should have. And Ryan Murphy's plots are kind of all over the place in everything he makes. The moment that lost me is when Lea Michele meets a new guy, Jesse, and starts dating him. Finn is jealous and sings, Jesse's girl. Uck. At least Sue pointed that out several times, notably in the Lady Gaga episode. I like to imagine the theatrics as fantasy versus the performances and competitions as real. Only way to justify their lighting setup. I watched a YouTube video recently done by someone who watched Glee for the first time during lockdown and they pointed out something that I always had an issue with while watching the show but could never quite articulate. There were no long-term consequences for anything anyone did. Rachel choked at her NYADA audition and then hounded and harassed Whoopi Goldberg until she got her to come to regionals and then she gets in and Kurt doesn't even though he nailed his audition. That moment made me legitimately angry at the time. Also, why in the F did a mother and daughter sing Poker Face to each other? Kurt not getting in was the most unrealistic thing. He's the one kid who actually has a unique voice being a countertenor. He would get in any music school in the world that he wanted and even get scholarships just because of his register. Rachel on the other hand was great, but had probably had competition in the thousands. I stuck around for the first 3 and gave up after the originals graduated. Definitely should have ended then. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.